Welcome back, everybody. This is Back to the Future Part 2. Gray Scott. So, a little quick update for you guys, just for the sake of it. So, the CPI report came out today, and it was a little bit higher than they were expecting. And we already been told that Jerome wasn't going to decrease rates this upcoming cycle, but that means that it may even delay when these drop at all this year. So this whole 4 drops this year, I guess we'll see. Everything can change as it has in the last month and 2, but just something to watch for. We might be stuck at these 6 to 7%ers until the end of this year.
I think so, personally. I think the way things have been going, it's like we're going to stay right here. I don't think they'll go up. I don't know if they would do that. Obviously, when push comes to shove, they should go up, to be honest with you. But I don't think they will. I think they'll hover it. Maybe they'll drop it a little bit. Maybe they'll raise it back up a little bit. But I don't think they're going to go above 8 and stuff again.
I agree. I kind of like you. I don't want them to decrease any quicker than they should, let's say. Because right now, I mean, you're seeing it with the stuff I'm dealing with clients, and it's like, it's getting pretty level. Yes, sellers have a little bit more of advantage just being that the lack of inventory, but with the lack of available buyers, you're able to negotiate a little bit more than what we've been used to. So we'll keep you posted as we always do, but just wanted to throw that out there. Today is March 12th, 2024. And so let's get into part 2 of Back to the Future. So just recap, if you guys haven't watched last week's episode, please do, because this will make more sense. But this week, today, we're going into 2020 and then 2023. And then next week, which is the final part of the series, we're going to kind of put all this information together and kind of make a roadmap as to why we got to where we're at today.
Mm-hmm. And what we recommend you guys probably think about at least, or to try to do, or put your own spin on going forward. Because, I mean, we put ourselves in a good position by stuff we'll get into, but even better position going for the next 3 years ahead. 2 years from now, a lot better off.
That's a good point, actually. We haven't talked about that enough. Is like, at the very least, take this information, not to say that maybe you can't do anything this year. That's fine and completely understood. But at least take this information, like make yourself a map of like, okay, the next 2-3 years, how can I structure my life or my budget or whatever to get to this goal of home ownership. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to throw this at you real quick. What were some points, if you can take back to last week, what were some metrics that kind of stood out to you, if you can remember? Because it's been a week.
I can. That the things, those everyday costs of like cars and all that really didn't change much, even like comparing it to today, kind of what I know. Housing went up a good amount, which makes sense. It still was going up on an average pace. Rent was going up. But all in all, it was like, what was surprising was the lack of surprises, more or less.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Because the housing stuff, like, I mean, we kind of already knew that, right? Like, of course it's been increasing, especially when you have those low interest rates that we saw back then and we will see in 2020. It's like, of course, like everybody who had a W-2 job could afford a house, really. Like, unless you were bogged down by crazy debt, you could afford your typical average home making $50,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So it's like, no wonder these prices are where we're at.
Yeah, and statistically, the majority wasn't bogged down with crazy amount of debt where they couldn't afford a house comparatively to now, which we'll get into why that is and really what's changed. It's not what you'd expect.
In 2020, this will be more evident next week when we go like side by side, but 2020 is really where we start to see either the uptick or the downslope, however you want to view it, of the economy, frankly, and how we got to this big jump that we're at 4 years later. So let's get into it. So 2020 year in review. So this is President Trump's first year.
Or last year.
Last year, sorry. Thank you. COVID-19 rocked our world. George Floyd incident. There's a lot that happened in this year. Blinding Lights by The Weeknd was the number one song. And the 800, which I'd never seen it, never heard of it, but that was the number one movie that year. So there you go. Let's go with pictures and review. So we got, there's a lot that happened. Trump last year, kid in a mask, putting windows to nursing homes with the grandparents and stuff. It was horrible, horrible times. Kyle Rittenhouse happened this year. All the George Floyd riots and all that stuff, that's the boarded up businesses. This is Tom Brady's last Patriot game this year. In 2020. All the California fires. That's the Golden Gate Bridge. And then Brexit. Mm-hmm. And then some you guys forgot, but Kanye was running for president. Oh, yeah. That's him in a campaign rally. And Kobe, R.I.P. And Gigi.
And this is us.
So that's me and my beautiful wife at a friend's wedding. Shout out Ben and Haley. And what were you doing?
This was Mother's Day brunch with Mom. We're at it's actually a little bit old. This picture was from 2019. Yes, it's 20. I think it was 2019 spring. We were at Andiamo in Clarkston. That's how old it was. It was in Clarkston still, and that was me and Mom. And I know you guys were there, but that was then.
Yeah, Mom's on the left. I cropped her out. Yep. What were you doing in life at this time?
During June of 22, I just moved to Colorado. Just started the job, Director of Sales, Marketing, Operations for Colorado Hill Claims. Interesting time of my life. With COVID and everything going down, I just moved from Arizona because COVID came back, and then my friend and his wife bought a house, and they said, "Hey, do you want to come move with us?" The whole story about how all that happened, but that's basically what I was doing. I was running a small business for them.
And you dropped out at ASU at that point, correct? Or is this
the November before, so November 19,
okay,
2019.
For those who don't know, he was going to Arizona State for
econ and pre-law double major. Really wanted to be an attorney, and not an attorney.
Schools and list goes on. Yeah. That's hard to believe that was 4 years ago. It seems like a lifetime ago.
I know. It's funny. It's kind of came full circle of like, I want to be an attorney, and now I'm selling software to attorneys and making more than attorneys, and working a tenth of the time.
Less stress. And
oh yeah.
So I might be off on this. Forgive me if I am, but I want to say 2020 for me, I got my broker's license because I've been licensed in 17, so that would make sense. I think so. It might have been 21. I can't remember. But I was just doing my thing in real estate. That was the year that me and Matt Bowman, business partner for the rentals, I want to say did we buy 2 that year?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's
P1 and G1.
Correct. So this is really when I started being an investor. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just doing real estate, doing the thing. We got shut down in March. And I remember the day I was doing showings, and then that broadcast came across like on your phones and radio, and it was like shut down. And my broker at the time called me and was like, and I was like, what does this mean? And she's like, you need to go home. Like we can't be out. Governor Whitmer said you cannot be out and showing homes and everything else. So it was a weird time.
I have a funny story. So when COVID went down, I was still in Arizona, and I was with my girlfriend at the time. And all the stuff was going down, and we thought it was just gonna like blow over. So we were just gonna stay in Arizona, and then ish got real. And remember how all of the stores were barren, all the meat shortage. So in Arizona, that didn't hit yet. So I flew home with like 15 pounds of ground beef and chicken and all that.
I forgot about that. Mm-hmm. That's right. See, it's wild that was only 4 years ago, man, and it's that. I mean, we've all lived through it now at this point, obviously, but this is going to go down. 2020 is one of the most, I want to say, like, world life-changing years in recent memory.
In a lot of ways.
I mean, in all of our lifetimes, other than like 9/11 maybe. But this was like a worldwide thing. I mean, this really shocked a lot of things. Commercial real estate got rocked. Yeah.
And I think the world got more connected and more divided than ever before at the same time.
You know, I was listening to a podcast a couple days ago. I can't remember who it was, but they actually, I liked what they were saying. They were saying that 2020 and COVID specifically, they think that a good way to view it is it basically pushed forward this AI stuff and like all this like 5 years really earlier than what would have been, because the remote work became prevalent and kind of took over now. And it makes sense, right? Like it was like, because in the middle of it, everybody was trying to figure out like, what is this? What do we do? And we made it work. We're Americans, is what we always do. But this is just a life-changing year for a lot.
Oh yeah, and remember like Tiger King, everybody during lockdown, like that's what we were watching, and TikTok was like just that blew up. That's what blew TikTok up, and it was just like a weird time, just such a weird time.
Alcohol sales skyrocketed.
Yep.
Because people were just at home, and so
Weird time.
So let's get into the economic landscape of it. So keep in mind, COVID hits, and there's a lot of printed money going on, a lot of stimulus, PPE loans, whatever, or PPP. Thank you. So yeah, keep that in mind as we're going through these metrics. All right. So housing. Again, just for everybody's sake, the metrics for the housing that I did was in Grand Blanc, a 3-bedroom house that has less than 1,500 square feet. Just your classic first-time home buyer house, okay? For perspective, back in 2014, which is when we started this series, this house was $122,250. So now in 2020, we're at $165,554. That was the average. Your interest rate, boom, 3.1. Rent for a 3-bedroom was $1,300 a month, and in just for reference, 2014 was $845. Your mortgage payment is $1,100 a month. So it's at this point in time, and this was the rhetoric going on, and it's true, it was cheaper to buy than to rent.
Oh yeah.
By $200 a month.
Plus the down payment.
Right. But still,
Yeah.
I mean, property taxes went up $3,500 based on the SEV. Originally in 2014, they were $2,800. Then we get to baby food, grocery. So I've been using baby food and formula as kind of the metric. So just for sake of clarity, this is just inflation, really, is what I'm getting at. Of like, okay, if you spent $40 then, how much would it cost you now for food? So and obviously we're only 4 years out from this time period, so it's not crazy like it was. So $40 then would be the same as you spending $47.75 today. So $100 worth of groceries in 2020 would cost $119. Okay. Household income, massive increase. So household income was $72,590.
It went up like 10,000. Went up like what, like 18% or so?
Sure did, because in 2014 it was 62,000, almost 63,000.
So in 6 years, it went up 18%.
Yeah,
Basically.
massive.
Yeah.
Credit card debt also increased to $820 billion.
Is that about double 2014's number?
2014 was $670 billion.
Okay.
So not quite. I mean, about 25% increase, give or take. Your credit card interest rate was 14.71. And then personal savings rate, 15%. That's massive. In 2014, which is actually the normal, was about 5.5%. But again, to my previous point, all the stimulus money. I know firsthand, between me and my then fiance, now wife, we were making more money in shutdown than we were. It was really on her end, making almost double, if not triple, what she would have at the job. And it wasn't our call. That's just that's the stimulus at the time. So I know firsthand, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of money, and where can you go to spend it?
Yeah, nowhere.
You know? And you'll see on other charts for the credit card debt, same thing. Is like there's a point in 2020, there's just like this big drop in credit card debts because people had all this money to spend on the debt. So interesting there. Retirement savings. So I just do, again, sake of clarity, age groups of not how much money is invested in retirement, but if any. So if you have any account in retirement, you're in this percentage. So 18 to 29 age group, 62% had retirement. Still on par with what we've been seeing. It was 61 in 2014. But half of these people are still in that group. Think about that. Age 30 to 39 was 71%. That decreased massively. So back in 2014, it was 81% for that age group.
Wow, dropped 10%. Okay.
And then age 40 to 49 was 83%. A little bit less than what we saw in 2014. That was 88%. So 5% decrease. Total assets in retirement accounts, 43.7 trillion. For perspective, in 2014, it was 32.7.
Oh, wow.
It's 10 trillion increase. Some of that is the market, right? S&P blew up and inflation and everything else. So then we get to childcare, and like you mentioned before, it's like it's always been expensive. Like it really hasn't increased a whole lot. So back then, 2020, your average was almost 11,000, 10,860 per year, and for 2014, it was 10,100. So not a big increase. Fed tax bracket was 12%. 2014 was 15%. So that did go down. It went down in 2017, though. We saw that. Gas prices, car costs. So, sake of argument, focusing on Chevy Equinox, base trim, your classic starter new car.
Especially the most common probably around here.
For sure. I mean, my wife has one.
Yeah, I had two.
Yeah. So 2020, it cost $26,300. 2014, it cost $24,300.
Really not that big of a jump.
10% increase in
Not even
in 6 years. Yeah. I mean, interest rate 4.3%, 4% in 2014. And then gas per gallon, $2.64 at the time, which would equate to $2.89 today. 2014, $3.37 with inflation. And then this is where we start seeing this stuff, average car payment. So back in 2014, which was frankly high, $482 per month. 2020 is $550 per month.
So let's pause there and break that down. What that means is that people are buying more expensive cars. They're taking out bigger loans.
They are. They have to be. And think about this too. Incomes increased a lot compared to then. The cars really hadn't a whole lot in comparison. And on top of the stimulus money we talked about and everything else is like 2020 economically, people had money.
Yeah.
You really did. So what I'll ask you, what sticks out, if anything?
For me, it's just lifestyle creep. The income went up 18% over 6 years, and then the monthly car payment went up for what? Like the interest rates and everything is relatively the same. It's like it's lifestyle creep is what that tells me, is they're making more money now, so they think they can just buy more expensive things without taking care of, the actual responsible finances part of it, of putting more down on that car because it's a more expensive car.
And do you think that was a psychological thing? Because at this time, people were locked in their house.
For sure.
Like, what can you do for fun?
No, for sure. I'm curious to see what the Amazon stock price was during 2020, because that people, they have no control, obviously, because it's government things that are, stopping everything in life, everything shut down. The only aspect they would have control of their life is like buying stuff. And right. You're at home. I need something. I can't get out of the house. I need something to bring me happiness.
Yeah.
So maybe that's kind of what I take from it.
I I remember there was a trend going on of a lot of people taking trips, like to the places that were open, like Florida, obviously blew up. Going down to like there was Saucecast, PBD. He was interviewing people at the time of how'd you get down here at to spring break this year, and they're like, oh, I got $4,000 in stimulus and I spent it all, and it's just like that stuff was happening. And then I guess to the car thing, remember the chip shortage and all that stuff. So I'm sure there were instances where somebody paid more than what that says because of these chip shortages. And I remember at one point the MSRP versus the asking price on some of these cars was just ludicrous because they could, and people were willing to pay at the time.
See, because let's talk about the car thing for a sec. Because I bought my Audi then. I bought it in 2020. It was a 2016 with 25,000 miles on it. It was I got it for basically 21 grand. It was a used car, so I was at like 8% interest. I refied later in January of 21 and got it down to 4. But my monthly payment was lower than that, even at double the interest rate of that. Right, so that again just tells me people are buying more expensive cars at the time.
Well, and you and I both know that's the case. I mean,
For sure.
As a whole, I have friends even that roll up in a brand new F-150, and it's like, oh, how much your payment? It's like $900 a month. It's like, that's dumb. But okay, so that was 2020, and let's get into 23. So now we're getting to frankly last year. So a lot of this should seem fairly relevant to y'all. So President Biden is in office. Chinese spy balloons, Maui fires, the Ocean Gate Titan, Kill Bill by SZA was the #1 song, and Barbenheimer. I just kind of put them both in there. Shout out Cillian Murphy, got his first Oscar. But so 2023, I know what you're doing. You know what I'm doing. So just to repeat, we've talked about this before, but 2023 was my rebound year. So I will say I saw this coming, but I saw real estate was kind of shrinking in terms of what I had been used to anyway since I joined in 2017. For those 2017 to 22, real estate was nuts. Like it wasn't hard to be active and get clients and do good business. And that all started shutting down once these interest rates started skyrocketing last year. Naturally so, right? So I got a W-2 job and more or less did that. You could say either I did that as a side hustle or real estate as a side hustle, whatever way you want. But I just did it to weather the storm. And thankfully I did, because it got me to where we're at today, where we could launch Outlier and do all the things we want to do, because I was able to pay off debt because I had 2 incomes coming in. And naturally, or not naturally, but surprisingly, I had one of my best years in real estate that year and doing it quote unquote part-time. So when we talk about part-time agents, it can be done in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I first quarter, I was still working at the investment firm, specialized team, promoting all that jazz. Hated it. Some crap went down. This dude pissed me off there, and I said I want to leave. And I got, within 4 days, I got an interview for my current job, tech sales and legal industry. For you guys who don't know, I've said it a couple times, but and then 4 days after that, I had an offer, and then I took it and left. And then that was it. I mean, really, that some other stuff happened and we'll get into, but it was basically that and prepping for the stuff we're doing.
Yeah, last year was laying the groundwork for this year. Yeah. Really what it was. Getting financially stable, and more than that, having a nest egg for, unexpected things, I guess. But yeah, so let's get into it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Year in review. A lot happened this year too, or last year rather.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of controversies. I guess this was the year of like controversies and lawsuits. Mm-hmm. We got Hunter Biden and President Joe right there. Miss Taylor Swift. We all, if you don't know about Taylor Swift, I don't know where you've been, but she
I wish I didn't know about her.
she took over the NFL. Everybody was fanboying over her and Travis Kelce, and he ended up winning the Super Bowl. Chinese spy balloon getting shot out of the sky. East Palestine.
Yep. And
Whatever happened with that?
nothing. Not for this podcast.
There's Michigan State school shooting. There was that Tennessee school shooting. There's a couple of those. Good old SBF. Sam Bankman-Fried. I have a lot to say about him. Maui fires. That's the Ocean Gate. Immigration. That's, you know where that is? That's a line in New York of just migrants. And then Messi came to MLS.
Hamlin and the Bills.
Yeah. That was when the whole, not to get into politics of the vaccine, but that's where things started to get like, what is going on with all these athletes in this vaccine? Gaza and Israel, obviously, in October.
Ukraine and stuff was 22.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
And then Trump and the indictments and everything else.
This is me. I was out in Arizona. That's actually from 2022. I didn't have any pictures from 23. I'm kind of I don't really leave my house or exist on social media too much. But this was actually 2022. Me and my friends rented a Airbnb in Fountain Hills, Arizona, for a couple days. That was pretty cool.
It was a sick house.
It was awesome. And I got an amazing deal on it because it was off season because it was in the summer. It was in July. And nobody wants to go to Arizona in July, but I do.
Yeah, I got married last year. So, yeah. And then, I mean, we kind of already talked about what we were doing that year. This was just prepping and working a lot, trying to stack cash.
Being strategic, really. Yeah, it was the year of strategy, I guess.
So now this is where we get to more pertinent times, right? I mean, this is kind of the stuff we're dealing with now. So housing. So just for perspective, in the 9 years that we've covered, so we started at 2014, that thing has gone up about $80,000. So housing for this in 2023, $201,500 for that 3-bedroom house in Grand Blanc. Interest rate, 6.81.
Over double.
The rent average for a 3-bedroom was $1,600.
Double what it was in 2014.
Mortgage payment, $1,700.
Almost double because it was $900 in 2014.
It's funny what interest does. And then property taxes went up to, obviously, $4,100. But this is where, see, in 2020, it was cheaper to purchase on your monthly anyway. Not 23 and really not right now either. It was almost $100 more per month to purchase a home. Baby formula, this is, $40 then is like spending $46 now, which is kind of crazy. It's a year, and it's still that much inflation, I know it says 2017. It's supposed to be 2023. $100 worth of groceries in 2023 would cost $115 today. Household incomes, $75,374. Pretty close to what 2020 was. Credit card debt, $1 trillion.
Doubled in 9 years.
And I sent you this earlier, Peter Schiff. Shout out Peter. He's great with these debt metrics. And he said that we are currently on pace to cross over, I want to say he said $3 trillion by the end of this year. In consumer debt.
Oh, wow.
$3 trillion. Now, that's all projection, but interest rate on credit cards is 21%. Went up almost 7% versus 2020. And then personal savings rate dropped 4.4%.
From 15 to 4.4 in 3 years.
Again, stimulus money. People aren't out spending. Retirement savings. Age group, again, not dollar amounts, just having something invested in a retirement account. 18 to 29 was at 57%, which is a little bit less than what we've been seeing, but only by a couple points. 30 to 39 was 72%. That's a drastic drop. That's 10% from 2014, 2017. 2020 was right about there too, I guess. And then 40 to 49, 81%, about 10% drop. We were at 88% in 2014. Total assets in retirement, 35.7 trillion. Which about the same. I mean, we were 32.7 in 2014. So, child care, right about the same.
$3 difference or something.
Yeah, 10,861 per year. Tax bracket was the same, 12%. The Chevy Equinox cost you $26,600 for the base model. Interest rate 7%. That's the killer. Gas per gallon $2.96. And then per month average of a car payment $738.
That makes me sick to my stomach. That means people are buying more expensive cars also at that higher interest rate.
At the almost a double interest rate. Gas is cheaper. The average then was cheaper than it is right now. I saw it the other day for like $3.70 a gallon. So you see 2020 and you see 23, and it all kind of makes sense. The interest rates, honestly, it's not like I'm coming up with a novel idea, is they should have never been that low to begin with. So the fact that they were kind of gave our economy hubris. And like the average guy, we have a video out there, the average Joe Blow making $50,000 a year could afford a house. And it's like, well, yeah, because the interest was 3.1%. And you're making pretty, as a household income, almost $15,000 more than you were 6 years prior to that. So, and this house was $40,000 cheaper. So it frankly, I wish I had a better answer, but it all kind of makes sense. Like, of course. People making more, spending more on these credit cards, higher interest rate on these credit cards. So that debt is even more than what it would have been. People basically it's just spending well above their means.
I was going to say at the end of the day, what it comes down to in my head is of the factors that can be controlled, people made it worse for themselves. For the factors that couldn't be controlled, they really didn't change that much.
No, you're absolutely right. That's a great way of putting it.
Like childcare, relatively the same. I mean, real estate, values went up, but also interest rates went up. So it's like, okay, again, just if you weren't spending more than you made on stupid stuff, which in the next one we'll kind of get into some details of what those things are. Just stupid stuff. And no wonder most people can't afford to buy a house right now. And you see, millennials and Gen Zs complaining all the time. It's like, well, it's mostly on you. Well,
you know what? I don't know. You guys are, if you've been listening to us, we talk about victim mentality a lot. And when you break it down in terms of reason and what can be done, what is complaining about rates or how inflation, like, what does that do? Nothing, right? It does nothing for you except psychologically put you in this hole that you think you can't get out of and just playing the victim. And it's like, okay, but what can I do? And it's not hard. It's not like, again, rocket science. I just need to make more money and save more than I spend. It's pretty simple. It's not that difficult. Yeah. Sacrifices involved. Like I just saw this picture today. It's been going around social media, but it was like picture of your classic family in 1950. It's a husband and wife, son and daughter. They're standing in front of like his 1955 Impala or whatever the car was, and it's a ranch house, and it's just basically the whole point of the thing is like, this is what America used to be on, like a single income, blah, blah, blah. And I was reading the comments, and one guy had again, not a novel idea, but just something to consider. That house back then was probably 1,000 square feet, let's say, for one. For two, the couple had one car. They didn't have two cars. They had the one car, the husband drove it, and the wife probably walked to the grocery store or whatever. Like, that's just how things were. They didn't have all these streaming services. They didn't have cable, internet, phone bills. Like, they didn't have all this extra stuff.
They didn't have credit cards.
They didn't have credit cards. I didn't even think about that. That's a good one.
They didn't have the option to just spend exorbitant amount of debt on things that aren't like a house or a car.
And this isn't going to say to like, hey, go out and be a Mennonite or a Amish, like, because I couldn't do that either. But to your point, a lot of this is choice. A lot of this is convenience. A lot of this is, maybe you don't. I've been in this boat too. There, you got all these streaming services: Peacock, YouTube TV, Paramount, Netflix, Hulu, Disney, ESPN, like, and more coming. And you don't need all of them. Like, we did this collectively. It was like, okay, I've watched Paramount once in a year. It's like, yeah, it's only $5 a month, but that's $60 a year that I could put towards something else. And it's like, these things add up, and you'll be amazed at like these little streaming services. And like, you can come up with like, oh, there's $100 a month, right?
I have a very good one that isn't talked about enough, mainly for my generation. You don't have to live in LA. You don't have to live in Scottsdale. You don't have to live in New York City. You don't have to live in Detroit suburbs. Okay.
Especially now.
That's the thing. Well, I see it all the time. Like, people will say that, and then kids my generation will be like, yeah, but like, it's boring elsewhere. But like, yeah, but it's boring because there isn't as many readily available places for you to go spend money that you can't afford. So guess what? Newsflash, 25-year-old person, don't live in downtown New York, in LA, and then sit there and complain. Okay, you want to do that? Go ahead, but don't sit there and complain to me that your rent is $4,000 a month for a shoebox and you can't afford to live. Because you got a marketing degree from NYU. I don't care.
And you know who else doesn't care? The debt collectors and your wallet. It doesn't matter what you want to happen and what you wish to happen. I like everybody else, sure. Do I hope that these prices are this astronomical and this, unaffordable? No. But you know what? It is. So what are we going to do about it? All you can do is take action and choice and be conscious about what you're doing. If you don't want a house, then keep spending your money, and then don't complain about it. I don't care. It kind of goes back to like voting. All right, it's like you have no opinion unless you place a vote type thing. Like, you always hear that, right? I heard that because, regretfully so, I didn't vote for like the first 2 elections I could have voted in, and I have recently. But it kind of is that. It's like, well, if you're gonna spend all your money, then don't turn around and complain that how tough it is. It's like, I don't really care what you have to say. So, I mean, it's it. Like, I don't know. But another thing that we found that's just not on here, and we'll bring this up for next week so we can actually see the math. What was the one smoking gun that we found that's been different from like generations past?
Nobody cooks anymore, and everybody eats out and everybody DoorDashes, and they're spending 10 times as much on those eating out and DoorDashing than they would if they just cooked.
Quick math. This is just from the top of my head, an article I was reading. What is the average cost of one serving at home, like one meal at home?
$5.
$5. It's like $4.80 or something. Average serving, DoorDash or out.
It's like 19 or something.
Yeah. It's like, if you go out like we do on occasion, it's like, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
And that doesn't even account for drinks, I'm sure, because that's just one serving of food. And I mean, we do that too. We go out and we get drinks and stuff too. We realize that is. So it's like, you guys are spending 5 times as much money on eating out and the convenience factor. We get it. We're not saying you have to cook every single meal, but don't complain that everything's so expensive you can't afford anything when you're spending willingly 5 times as much money on convenience.
Well, and you're right, because it's not even like, hey, don't get that Starbucks a day type stuff. It's like, No, you're buying 4 Starbucks a day. You're doing $20 of food at least once a day, and that's for one meal. And I know personally of people that is all they do. They don't cook. Like they just eat out. And sure, I'm sure there's some ways you can find, because we've talked about this. There are occasions where it makes more sense to do that, purchase out, and then have like a leftovers or something like that. It's like, okay, that $20 spend turns to like 8, let's say $10, $8 for a serving because you got 2 meals out of it. There's ways that you can get around it. I get that. But by and large, you're not doing that. And it's like, okay, if you're spending, let's say even 2 meals a day, that's 40 some bucks, not including delivery if you do DoorDash. So it's like, let's say 50 bucks. You're spending 50 bucks every day to eat.
That's $1,500 a month right there. That's a mortgage payment.
So I'm not accusing anybody, but if you fall into this bracket of these things that we're talking about, the way you spend your money, I don't feel sorry for you.
I'm accusing people because I can. I'm 25. I lived it with a lot of people around me. Is they chose to live in expensive areas because it's fun and they like going out and doing all this stuff. Then they complain because they can't save money to buy a house. Yeah, no wonder.
And I'll just put it even more simply, which I said earlier. Do you have a right to be irritated that the way the economy is? Sure. Okay. Is complaining about it solve anything? Not really. So that's kind of my argument is like, yeah, it's not as easy as it was to your grandparents. Sure. But you know what? Who cares? Nobody cares. It is what it is. So you can complain all you want, but nothing's going to happen until you take action. So with that said, we'll see you next week, part 3.
Bye-bye.